everyone, and welcome back to another English with Dry. Today we're looking at the second of Macbeth's major monologues. This one's from Act 2, Scene 1, and it is where he highlights the airborne dagger. So the first thing worth noting is that it is a dagger that he sees. Now, this is probably because it's exactly the weapon he has with him, but it's important to consider why Shakespeare has used a dagger rather than anything else, because the dagger really juxtaposes heavily with the long battle sword Macbeth would have been using at the start of the play. The easy nature of the dagger to conceal makes it something of a coward's weapon. And that's, of course, what Shakespeare's trying to get across. That Macbeth, by murdering Duncan at night, in his sleep, is being a coward because he is not engaging him in honourable combat. This kind of proves that there's no way other than a treacherous, dishonest way to murder the king. He then asks the handle toward my hand. Now, it seems almost to be leading him to Duncan, almost demanding Macbeth carry out the act. Now, he is aware that this could be a fatal vision. Now, that's not fatal as in a vision that is going to cause death, although that is, of course, the double meaning of it. But fatal here refers to fate. And this ties in with the idea that because the witches have prophesied it, Macbeth starts to believe that this is something he is destined to do. He's aware that this is a false creation, something that his confused mental state has created. He's aware that his guilt and ambition are almost pushing him closer and closer to the madness he'll eventually totally succumb to. But he calls it an instrument. Now, this word is very significant because it's a word that the witches were described as previously by Banquo. Now, this shows them as tools of chaos and disorder and connects this hallucination with them. Perhaps Macbeth thinks that it's they who are putting this vision in front of him as a means of encouraging him to do it. As his monologue continues, he describes how the dagger changes in appearance. Suddenly it's covered in blood. Now, this symbolises the guilt that he already feels. You know, blood is a motif that is used to represent guilt throughout the play. But it also reflects possibly that his mind is set, that he already knows that he is going to do this. He then calls it a bloody business. Now, repetition of the word blood, but also repetition of bloody. Now, that recalls the previous monologue we looked at, where he called what he was going to do bloody instruction. Now, that was an ironic foreshadowing then of the fact that somebody would murder him to become king, if that's how he got the crown. And here it's almost an ironic acknowledgement that that is precisely what will happen. He describes how nature seems dead. Now, this is a sort of lamentation that all of the things that he is doing and are taking place that night are against the course of nature as God has intended it to be. The half-world he talks of is nighttime, and of course that's a time when everything seems dead anyway, and it's the perfect backdrop for this evil deed. In fact, he then references a lot of imagery related to murder. Hecate, or Hecate as the iambic pentameter makes it here, the sentinel of the wolf, and then also Tarquin's ravishing stride. Now, this references Shakespeare's poem The Rape of Lucretia, in which the character Tarquin carries out a nighttime rape of a friend's wife. Now, this shows, again, that Macbeth is very acutely aware of how violating this murder will be to be done in the dead of night. And then he continues as it goes on. He is becoming more and more concerned that by talking about doing this, he's going to talk himself out of it. He says that endlessly going over it is starting to put him off, and that's why he needs to just get it done. That's when the bell rings. The bell that Lady Macbeth has arranged will be rung when everything is in place for him to go. And he talks about how he's acknowledged his criminality, but he's resolved to go ahead regardless. I go and it is done, he says. And he says that for Duncan, it's a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. Now, that references Christian judgment, the process of everyone being judged for their life's work once they have died. And so therefore he's saying, I'm going to be sending Duncan to this judgment. But of course the reference to judgment also relates to himself. Of course his judgment is going to be sealed by doing this. And so our 5-box summary. As he waits for the signal to enter Duncan's chamber, Macbeth hallucinates a dagger in front of him. He realises it's not real and that it is a figment of his increasing guilt. Suddenly blood appears all over the blade, indicating that his mind is made up to follow through his ambition. Macbeth describes how dark and grim the night is and even personifies nature as having died. And finally, the bell's ring calls him to act, and he resolves to send Duncan into the afterlife. I hope you found this video helpful. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.